Yo guys, what's going on? Lucky Cheese 7 is back again to give you guys Chainsaw Man chapter 145 live stream discussion slash review. Also Chainsaw Man Part 2 chapter 48. Yeah, 48. As far as just Part 2 by itself goes. But number one, I just want to say it feels so great talking about Chainsaw Man like on a weekly basis again. Like it feels so great, you know, coming back after such a long time, doing the stream from yesterday, just encapsulating my thoughts on how part two's been going so far. Even though I didn't exactly do, I wouldn't say a perfect job at it, but not necessarily, tackle like everything in full detail like I liked. But this was still quite a way to come back to talking about chapters on a weekly basis because man, like I said this in yesterday's stream that this arc that we're currently in right now would sort of be like the game changer arc for part two. And it looks like now that's looking like to be the case, given with recent developments and with what we're getting in this chapter. But before we get to that, let's go ahead and actually talk about the contents of the chapter itself. So again, chapter 145 or chapter 48 as far as part 2 goes. So we're here. All Chainsaw Man Church affiliated facilities in Tokyo. Kanagawa, Fukuoka, yeah, there we go. Fukuoka and Osaka are now under our control. We seized their secret caches, and heavy weaponry. What about the miners with illegal contracts? We're interning them in the Devil Control Center. And we see some CCG members over here, all in the call in the parents and establish a victims group. Bring in the media too. Get those crying faces on camera. Chainsaw Man Chapter 145 Kumbaya. Now, when I first heard Kumbaya, like, I usually associate Kumbaya with, like, like dancing and everything, right? Like, that's usually what I associate Kumbaya with. But when I looked at the meaning of Kumbaya in detail, like, if you really look at it, Kumbaya, it actually means, arise or like it's like come or like is coming. Like something is like a mist. That is essentially what kumbaya means. Like because usually with Fujimoto, with what I've realized is that he doesn't just give his chapter titles like just random like titles or whatnot. Usually there's like a hidden meaning behind it. And kumbaya in most cases does have that essentially. But let's see here. Go in here and let me turn off my a message app real quick. That way it doesn't like go off every 10 minutes. But let's see here. I'm also authorizing the capture of the War Devil, aka Asamitaka. Can't leave the church's poster girl out in the wild. And here I was hoping she'd do us a favor and turn Chainsaw Man into a weapon. And that's one of the public safety members goes on to say, "Sir, the devil name consultant wants to speak with you. Says it's urgent. Understood." And then you just see him like looking out towards like the poster that has Asamitaka, has Chainsaw Man. And it says Chainsaw Man Church, join us. And he continues to say, like, what do you suppose that the Chainsaw Man Church wanted in the end? And he says to play at being Chainsaw Man, probably. Thus, we cut over to where Baram's at with Fumiko and with Denji Naoda. So I remember mentioning this in the last chapter, or in the stream I did yesterday. But I said that it had been like a couple of chapters since we had last seen Denji. And granted, the case in point is that the last few chapters took place before, right? Like before chapter 142. So it was like just a little bit beforehand. So now it's like now we're like catching up to what's been going on. But we see Denji, he's holding on to Mayuta, and he's still got like public. You got public safety members like surrounding where Barham's at. And one of these guys says, Chainsaw Man Church, second in command, Barham Bridge. You're under arrest of charges of arms trafficking and furnishing devil contracts to minors. And then you got Fumiko here saying, why don't you work for public safety next? Bo and Katana are already with us. Which is really telling. And we know this because of how the last chapter ended with Katana Man just showing up and like, you know, like like going all deck against the members of the Chainsaw Man Church. But it's also really telling because that's also where we kind of got the reintroduction of Quan Chi. So a lot of people, from what I've noticed, is trying to figure out where exactly Reze is. That's the big thing. Is like, okay, so we know Katana Man's with public safety. We know Quan Chi's with public safety, obviously. Where's Reze? And the one thing I do want to say about Reze is this: is Fujimoto knows, like, just how important of a character Reze is. Like, he knows exactly like how vital she was to Part One, and to essentially was how much importance she had to Denji. So when you're looking at it like that, he is so self-aware about Reze as a character that he's gonna drop Reze when we least expect it, and I guarantee you that's what's gonna happen. We're gonna see Reze when we're least expecting it. So, do I believe we're gonna see Reze? Yes. Do I believe we're gonna see her anytime soon? Like, if I know Fujimoto's track record so far, um, with part two. Usually, he kind of likes to build things up like towards the very end. So maybe towards the end of this arc, which it seems like we're probably getting to here shortly. But maybe either towards the end of this arc, I would say we get Reze, or definitely beginning of the next one. That's what I feel. I feel like the beginning of the next arc, or the very end of this arc, we'll get like a slight tease of Reze. At least that's what I'm feeling because of how many characters are like starting to like reintroduce. Shoot, we still haven't even seen Kobeni yet either, which is telling. But that being said, we see Barham, and he's just saying, "Could you give me a minute? It's sunset, the most beautiful time of the day." And like you see, like these public safety members are like, "What is he talking about?" Like he's like, man, just wants to like look over at the sunset. Like, okay, there's nothing super crazy here. And we cut over to like a different part of the city where we see where, and I'm assuming this is kind of where the school used to be. So basically, when Denji took on Yuko, and with what happened there, because we see the remains of like one of the devils. It says, upon analysis, we've identified that this devil, believed to have been defeated by Chainsaw Man the other day, as the Justice Devil. Yeah, pretty much basically the big devil creature that Yuko turned into, like in the very beginning of part two. So it's interesting to note that this is actually still like laying about here. Any chance it's the fairness or equality devil? No. Its name is Justice. Justice. I'd stake my life on it. Which begs the question. Even after the devil's death, the Chainsaw Man Church followers could use the power attributed to the Justice Devil. Is that correct? According to the reports, yes. Division 4 killed a follower who used it. In that case, like the devil they made contracts with was never the Justice Devil. And first of all, I do have to say this. It has been a while since we've seen Asami Taka. It has been a good while, and I mentioned this in the last stream too. That the last time we saw Asa, looking back on the chapters, actually, what was it like? Chapter one? It was like 134. I want to say 134, 134, 135. Let me actually get a proper look back on this just to get a fair idea. 140. Okay, so we got 135. Okay. Was there anything for Asta afterwards? No, there wasn't. So yeah, pretty much like yeah, it has pretty much been like exactly 10 chapters since we last saw Asa. Which leads me to believe either one thing. This is either the beginning of this current volume, which I want to say is 17, right? I feel like it's 17. Either 17 or 16. No, 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 it's not 17. I'm 100% sure it's 16. Let's take a look. So, yes, this probably would be the beginning of volume 17, then, because 16 by this point will probably have to be finished. So, it's either the beginning of volume 16, not 16, 17, is either the beginning of volume 17, or it's potentially the second chapter of volume 17. Potentially. I think given how last chapter ended, that would be a good closure for volume 16. It's a good hook to get us into like, all right, so what's been going on? To which now we see, okay, this is what we're getting. That's how I'm viewing it anyway. I mean, it would kind of fit the cream of the crop, if you will. Like if you look at the last volume, 15 had about 11 chapters. So I think it's possible. It's very possible actually that volume 16 could actually end up being 11 chapters too. At least in my opinion, anyway. But we see this. Asa's here after, yeah, practically ever since like the third volume. After, yeah, 10 chapters, if you will. After the 10 chapters, we see Asa. She's looking at the TV. We're broadcasting to you live from the Chainsaw Man Church's Okinawa chapter. Take a look, folks. Followers who've illegally contracted with the Justice Devil are fighting devil hunters right before us. Right before our eyes. And then Asa saying, the Chainsaw Man Church is doing what? You got Yoru in the back too. And you see like the doorbell being rung. Asa's looking over. And you have like people like in the back. War Devil, get on the ground with your hands behind your head. And then Asa says, I came up with a plan in case enemies ever got my address and attacked us at home. This apartment belongs to me. I'm about to turn room 606 into a weapon. I need you to control my body afterwards. And Yoru's actually a little stunned by this. She's like, wait a second. You want me to do what now? Like, you've become pretty wild compared to when we first met. And Asa says, yeah, and I wonder whose fault that is. Basically saying because Yoru's been hanging around Asa for like this long, it's kind of allowed her to develop this habit of like, safety precautions and whatnot. So and it shows like how much Asa's developed too. Like if you compare Asa when we were first introduced to her, in chapter 98 to seeing where she is right now, again, that's like 47 chapters. That is crazy to see like how much she's developed in that much of a time span. But you see her putting her hand on the floor. She says, get ready. Room 606. Right as this happens, yo, this man Yoshida just shows up. Like with the sword, and you're thinking, okay, well, what's going on? And she says sword. So it's the timing of that is It's crazy, but you see, and it's kind of interesting how you cut back over to Barum, and he says, "Kumbaya, my lord, kumbaya, kumbaya, my lord, kumbaya." And Denji notices, and he says, "Okay, Naita, I think it's best we go off home. Like, I'm gonna drop you off." And Naita's like, "I'm starving. Kumbaya, my lord, kumbaya, my lord." Thus, you see Yoshida. Oh Lord, kumbaya. As we figure out, Yoshida brought out the sword and he chopped off Asa's hand, which is pretty much the way I can use a proper analogy here. Imagine using like the best attack possible, and then someone pulls out like a mirror force. That is essentially what happens. Like, okay, like you think you're gonna do this? Let me show you my special technique. That is essentially what happens. Asa, again, seems like she had the best approach. Like, okay, so she had countermeasures on what needs to be done, only to be, subsided by Yoshida. So we're getting a confrontation between Asa and Yoshida, and that is just whoa. Like, and if this is the start of Volume 17, this is a very great way. Like, it's an amazing way to start off the volume. Like, holy shit! Because I remember, like, going through this chapter, like when this dropped, just today, right? And I'm like going through it, and I get to the end. I'm like, wait a second, what the hell? So it's really telling with what we're doing, what Fujimoto has in store for us. Now, again, we're getting a Asa and Yoshida confrontation, which kind of gets you thinking, who's gonna make it out of this? Like, realistically, who is gonna make it out of this? Asa or Yoshida? And there are two cases here because Yoshida kind of has Denji on a leash to not turn into Chainsaw Man for a very specific reason. And I wonder if Fujimoto put Asa in the situation, have her fight Yoshida, and she takes out, and when I mean Asa, I mean Yoru. Like, she allows Yoru to take over and bests Yoshida. It's possible, but we know how Yoshida is, given with how his character was in part one, and given that Asa still, I don't want to say inexperienced, but she's still, getting a good grasp of her powers. Like, she has, like, compared to early on, she is doing a phenomenal job with using her powers, and it shows here that she, came with countermeasures. What needs to be done, only to then be subsided by again Yoshida, and of course Denji taking Nayuta home, which he knows, like, okay, some shit's about to go down. He knows the thing about Denji's situation right now is that you have Kishibe, so Kishibe knows what's going on with Denji. His whole priority right now, take care of Nayuta. That's the only thing he has to do. So Denji, for the most part, is safe. At least at this point in time. We won't know at the very least until the next chapter. But Asa's situation, on the other hand, I mean, look, the roles were reversed. It was Denji who was like at the cream of the crop, and then within a matter of seconds it switched, and Asa became, the queen, if you will. And now Denji's kind of like at the bottom tier. So it's kind of ironic, actually, right? But the funny thing about this too is that Asa didn't want this attention. She says it feels like it's an invasion of privacy, and given with what we're getting right now, like, this is a literal definition of invasion of privacy. It's like I'm just here. I'm not relaxing, but like just trying to take preemptive measures. and then these guys show up, and Yoshida of all people too. So there's that. I'm really curious again with what Fujimoto has to offer. I know some people are still kind of curious about Reze when she's gonna pop back up, and I think 100% Reze is gonna either pop up at the very tail end of this arc that we're currently in, or we're gonna see her in the next arc. One of those two scenarios I do think is gonna happen. But overall, my thoughts on this chapter of Chainsaw Man, I'm gonna give it pure perfection. It was a pure perfection chapter, and honestly speaking, like I cannot wait to see what Fujimoto has to offer when it comes to chapter 146. Which, by the way, we did get a window on the next chapter, so we're not gonna get the next chapter until next week, which I'm looking forward to. Now, I do want to say that given that it's gonna be next Tuesday, that's gonna be when I go back to work. So you probably won't get the chapter discussion stream for Chainsaw Man, at least on my end of things, until probably sometime after I get off from work. So do keep in mind about that. Is that I will do a live stream discussion on the next chapter. It's just probably going to be a little bit after, like sometime after the chapter comes out next Tuesday. It won't be like immediately like what I'm doing right now with this chapter. But this was still a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun talking about Chainsaw Man again after such a long time. Talking about one chapter. Again, Asa versus Yoshida is going to be a fight that is going to be really, really interesting to see what happens. And also just figuring out what we're going to do with Denji too. But aside from that, you guys, that's pretty much all I got to say when it comes to this live stream discussion slash review on Chainsaw Man Chapter 145. Let me know what you guys' thoughts were on this chapter. What was your favorite part about it? Did you guys have any gripes with the chapter? Are y'all still thinking like, yo, Fujimoto, when is Reze coming? Like, we need to know, when is Best Girl showing up? Personally, to me, like I said, I'm enjoying the write of part two. And whenever he does said to, you know, reintroduce us to Reze, I'll be ready. As ready as I will be for whenever Kopeni pops back up too. And Kishibe. Where has this man been? Kishibe has like kind of been like off the grid since the end of part one. So that's another character we need to get reintroduced to. But again, that's besides the point. I'm gonna end it off right here, guys. Have an amazing day. I hope y'all are doing well out there. And I will catch you guys when 146 drops. Peace.